At this time, I'd like to call to order the September 12th, 2017 regular scheduled meeting of the Davie County Board of Education. First on the agenda is to adopt the agenda, and we need a motion to adopt the agenda. Got a motion by Mr. Drexler. Do we have a second? We have a second by Mr. Hales. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. At this time, we're moving on to the closed session portion of our meeting, and I will ask for a motion to go into closed session to preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to the North Carolina General Statutes listed on our agenda to discuss personnel matters protected by state law and to discuss student matters made confidential by general statutes and FERPA. Do we have a motion? We have a motion by Ms. Owens. Do we have a second? We have a second by Mr. Junker. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. We're now in closed session. At this time, I'd like to reconvene the September 12th, 2017 regular scheduled meeting of the Davie County Board of Education. And welcome. Glad you're here. Next up on the agenda is our invocation. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace as we make decisions that will affect our great county. And continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth, for the greater glory of you, and for the service of humanity. We ask these things in your name. Amen. At this time, I will ask the Girl Scout Troop 2580 from the First Baptist Church in Mocksville to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ladies. We're glad to have you tonight. Next up on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for our last regular scheduled meeting on August the 1st. Do I have a motion? Have a motion by Ms. Horn. Have a second by Mr. Drexler. I'll get it right here in a minute. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next up is the important date calendar, and I will point out a few. Let me get my calendar out. So, Board, we have for those that are going, North Carolina School Board Association district meeting in Winston at 4 o'clock on the 20th, Wednesday the 20th. September 28th, we will be eating lunch at Shady Grove Elementary School at 12 o'clock. Commissioners meeting will be on Monday, October the 2nd at 6 o'clock, and then our meeting will be back in here October the 3rd at 6. And then we've got a law conference the 11th through the 13th in Asheville for those that are going. And then on the 26th, Thursday the 26th, we will be at South Davie Middle School for lunch at 12 o'clock. And that is all I have for now. I'll turn it over to Dr. Hartness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be back in school. We've had an excellent start to the school year, and I want to thank all of those of you who were able to join us at our opening convocation. Going to see a lot of gray Davie County Schools t-shirts around Davie County, established 1885. So it was a wonderful event, and appreciate everybody who made that possible. Board, I'm going to deviate from my notes for a second. I noticed that several of you were picking on one of our fellow board members for a milestone birthday, and I want to congratulate Barbara on her birthday, but I want to also congratulate Barbara, who's the president of the Mocksville Rotary Club. Both she and Stephanie Kofid were awarded a Making a Difference award today by our district Rotary governor. So could y'all join me in congratulating Barbara and Stephanie? So we have a number of staff updates. This could be a longer meeting tonight with all of our staff updates. So we're going to give you some more information about academics and enrollment and our budget, so we're looking forward to that. I mentioned to folks earlier that we were anticipating a visit from President Spellings from the university system at Davie Early College High School. We do not yet have a firm date for that. That was pushed out to October, and as soon as we get that date, we will invite you and let you know that when she will be arriving. You probably saw an announcement that we made this past week about collecting school supplies for Houston Independent School District. We are partnering with the Winston-Salem Journal and Christie Trucking through September 16th, collecting school supplies at each of our schools for students and staff, teachers in Houston Independent School District. They have 218,000 students. They moved 30,000 students to open schools back up yesterday, and they've had damage to over 50 of their school buildings. So I know that there's been a lot of damage in Houston. So we are partnering with those folks to try to send school supplies for those students as they crank back up. So anyone who wants to contribute to that can make donations at your local school, or you can go to the link we provided online and make a monetary donation. We are very fortunate that we missed the residual effects of this last hurricane, Hurricane Irma. We really continue to keep those who were in the path of that storm in our thoughts of prayers, pretty much the whole state of Florida. And I'm sure as we learn more about the needs across Florida, there will be even more opportunities to give back and help our neighbors. Switching gears, our new high school opened on time. We've had a couple football games since that point in time. And I want to thank all of you who participated in the ribbon cutting ceremony and our community tours. We had large crowds. I have no idea on a way to quantify the number of people that have been through the new high school, but it's been a lot of folks. After the first day, traffic has been better, and it's gotten better over the first week. Students and staff, from all reports that I receive, have quickly become acclimated to their new home, and things are going well. They're getting used to new schedules. So we not only have a new school, but we have a new schedule with smart lunch and a whole different range of activities there, and folks are beginning to get used to that as well. The transition to the school has been about as smooth as I think could have been planned, and there's a lot of people who made that possible. I'm going to recognize a few of those in just a few minutes. I've had a couple people ask me about changes to roadways near the school. And just a reminder that as part of our project, we had a road improvement section of our contract that had added additional turning lanes on Farmington Road and widened that road in front of where the high school is located. That's pretty much the scope of what we had control over as part of the project. NCDOT has been in touch with us, and we've talked with them about what the future plans are in the area. And I wanted to share with you some information I received from DOT this past week. There is a project on the books to construct roundabouts at the intersection of Farmington Road and 158 and Interstate 40 eastbound ramps and Farmington Road. That's part of the 2018-2027 State Transportation Improvement Program. According to DOT, property acquisition for that project is scheduled to begin in 2023 and construction in 2024. So any changes to that road, it appears on the current timeline, is a number of years out. But I wanted you to be aware that we did ask about that, and that's the response we received from DOT. So planning and design work will begin in early 2018. As an update on the site, the new high school site itself, construction continues on the baseball and the softball fields. If you've been by there recently, you'll see backstops have been poured and foundations for dugouts have been poured, and you'll see some brick going up soon. You'll see lighting poles are going to be installed at baseball, softball, and the tennis courts. So there's a lot of work being done around those areas as they bring in utilities around those fields and the tennis courts. The utility building that houses the mowers and equipment has been completed. They're working on pouring a pad for the greenhouse structure. So there's still some things being wrapped up on the new site. The demolition contractor will be on site at the Salisbury Road campus later this week as they start staging for the demo of the oldest buildings on that campus. So, updates to come as that contract gets underway. We are off to an excellent start here on the 11th day of school, and I look forward to many great days ahead this school year. And board, if you don't mind, I am going to ask Mr. Wallace to join me at the podium because there's a few people in our audience that I would like to recognize tonight. I feel like we have talked a lot over the past 3 years, really, or more. This is year 7 for me. We've talked about this high school for a long time, and there's been a lot of people who have been part of planning, designing, implementing, staging, and there's a couple here tonight that I would like to recognize especially. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. Everybody gets to see the shiny things like the ribbon cuttings and the community tours and the first day of school and the things that end up in magazines and on the newspaper. But what you don't see is what goes on behind the scenes. And Mr. Wallace can tell you the thousands of hours that our staff has been involved in planning to have a successful transition to this new school. And there's a few people that I want to recognize tonight that have been an integral part of that. And the first one I'm going to ask to come up is Michael Spillman. Michael, if you'd come up for a minute. Mr. Spillman is our facilities director, and I would tell you that I think there's probably nobody in the school district that knows more about what's behind the walls, what's in the ceilings, and what's on the roof of that new school than Michael Spillman. He has been involved in multiple failed attempts to build a high school, right, Michael? Yes. He's been involved in multiple times of estimating and putting together plans, and from the very inception of this concept of a new high school in Davie County, Michael Spillman's been at the table, from the site development to the finished product, and he's still extremely involved with him and his staff in maintaining and supporting the infrastructure at this school and at all of our schools. And for that, we want to say a big thank you to Michael Spillman for his hard work and dedication to making the new high school a reality. I'd like to call from behind the curtain Mr. Butch Rooney. These guys didn't know they were being recognized tonight, but I have known Butch a long time because y'all probably know in my previous life I was a chief technology officer in 2 school districts, and Davie County was the envy of school districts in North Carolina as the first district to have fiber optic connectivity between schools. So Butch Rooney's name's been around the state for a long time. And from the very beginning of planning this school, Butch was a part of how do we make this the very best instructional technology experience we can make it. And Butch was responsible for bringing in a variety of new technologies for our teachers to try in their classrooms and to test, and part of the acquisition and negotiation with vendors and other people who supplied technology for the school, and has led his team in transitioning the equipment that we brought with us and all the new installation, and spent many, many hours in a whole lot of different meetings. How many Monday morning meetings did y'all have?
At least 2.5 months.
At least 2.5 months worth. But we want to appreciate and thank Butch Rooney for all that he has done to not only support technology for all of our schools, but make Davie County High School a technology showcase. There's another guy behind the curtain I'm going to call out, and the TV service may stop, your sound may go out, this might go out, but Eddie Green, come on out here. Eddie is a guy that we depend on a whole bunch. In fact, I pick on him all the time. I said, Eddie, please don't get run over by a bus or our whole school system will shut down, because everything we do today involves technology. And this guy is the mind and the brains behind how all that connectivity works. And we depend on Eddie in every department. But we've really seen his talents showcased with the development of this high school. From the wireless infrastructure to the wired infrastructure to the sound to the phone systems. There are just so many ways that Eddie Green and the technology team have worked with the electrical engineers and the designers to make this a first-class 21st century school. And Eddie, you will see a truck with a trailer, all kinds of crazy hours beyond the workday. And Eddie just pours his heart into everything he does and has spent hundreds and hundreds of hours beyond his normal duties to make things work. You'll see him at football games, making sure the sound and the lighting's right. You will see him at student performances in our middle schools, taking care of sound. Eddie is always behind the scenes making sure that everyone's taken care of. And Eddie, we thank you for that and for your dedication and hard work. There's one more person I want to recognize tonight. Todd Naylor, would you come up? Todd got excused from a lot of those crazy maintenance, technology, planning meetings on Monday mornings. But this is a guy who is always ensuring our students are safe. This is the person that I talk to at 4 o'clock in the mornings in the winter, who's always behind the scenes making sure that our schools are safe. He leads up our safety team. He's the fire chief at Farmington. He attends emergency management meetings with us, and he's always looking out for how we can make sure that our schools are safe, not just school buses, in every aspect of the district. And Todd is not only a great man with a big heart, but he sincerely believes in Davie County schools and what this school district stands for. He's been in part, if there's any traffic issues at the high school, I won't blame him on Todd, because he has worked with us and worked with engineers as we've designed the flow of traffic, and he's worked with DOT. I could just stand up here and tell you hours and hours of things that this guy does behind the scenes that you probably will never see, but we should never take for granted. And for that, Todd, we thank you for your hard work and dedication in making sure our new school is a safe place for teaching and learning. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, and thank you for recognizing those folks. They certainly poured, as you said, hours and hours into that school and poured their heart into it. And I think that's happened a lot around here, and that's why it's turned out to be a great place. At this time, we're moving on to recognitions, and the item on our recognitions agenda is the Governor's School, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Haynes.
Fuller, board members, and guests. First of all, just a little bit of background about Governor's School. In case you don't know, Governor's School is a 5.5-week summer residential program that serves up to 325 students across North Carolina who are intellectually gifted. These students are typically rising seniors. Sometimes we have rising juniors who participate, particularly in performing or visual arts. But North Carolina's Governor's School is the oldest statewide summer residential program for AIG students in the nation. So that's just something to note. There are two campuses. There's Governor School West at Salem College and Governor School East at Meredith College. And the program integrates academic disciplines, the arts, and unique courses, focusing on exploration of the most recent ideas and concepts in each of the disciplines. So Governor School is a highly competitive process, but it is an amazing opportunity for our students who get to participate. This past summer, Davie County had 4 students who were selected to participate in Governor School, so we would like to honor and recognize them for being selected, as well as for representing Davie County schools so well. So I'm going to ask them to come up as I call their names. First of all, we have William Quinn Collins, and I don't think Quinn could be with us tonight, but he went to Campus West in instrumental music for trombone. He's currently a junior at Davie High School, and he's the son of Charles and Yvette Collins of Moxville. We have Avery Boudreau. If Avery will come up. Avery went to Campus East for math. She is a senior at Davie High School and is the daughter of Miss Louise Boudreau of Moxville. We have Tyler Zickman. Tyler went to Campus East as well in math, is also a senior at Davie High School, and is the son of Gary and Vicki Zickman of Moxville. And then finally, we have Samantha Smith. And Samantha went to Campus West, and she participated in the natural science program there. She's also a senior and is the daughter of Anthony and Ashley Smith. So please join me in congratulating these folks and thanking them.
Congratulations. We applaud all the hard work. We know it took a lot of hard work to get there. At this time, we're moving on to our consent agenda, and I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Have a motion by Mr. Junker. Do we have a second? Have a second by Ms. Horn. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. This time, we're moving on to bus driver pay raises. First item under our business items, and I'll call on Dr. Hartness to talk to us about that.
Board, we have some good news. Included in the last state budget was an allocation to each school district to increase the pay of our bus drivers. So that's something that's a welcome allocation that I haven't seen in my career, actually, as an addition. But the legislation directed school districts to use the funds to increase the average rates of pay for all school bus drivers on an equitable basis. We looked at, and Mr. Naylor and Ms. Miller and I looked at different ways that we might accomplish this. You can see on your agenda item the amount of money that was there. Our average hourly rate for a bus driver is $13.77. The beginning rate is $10.95 per hour. And the recommendation from staff to use this allocation would be to increase bus driver pay by $1 per hour. So that's the majority of our bus drivers would receive a $1 per hour increase. Some it's a few cents more. Like on that front end pay, it would be $1.05. So what we would ask you to do tonight is to have a motion to approve the hourly pay increase for all of our bus drivers. We're glad to entertain any questions or comments from the board on this allocation.
So we have a motion on the floor, a recommendation for a motion on the floor, and we have a motion. We have a second. So we have a motion by Mr. Potts. We have a second by Ms. Owens. Do you have any discussion or any other comments? Seeing none, I'll go ahead.
I was just going to say it's long overdue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sure. No. Seeing nothing else, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. At this time, we're moving on to facilities and Pine Brook Elementary School gym floor replacement. I will ask Mr. Spillman to come up and talk to us.
Chairman Fuller, Board, Dr. Hartness, staff, and guests. I'm bringing before you tonight the Pine Brook Elementary School floor replacement. Pine Brook Elementary School gymnasium currently has an interlocking plastic floor system that is 20 years old. The floor is in need of replacement. The Pine Brook PTO has raised $29,843.37 for this project and has a private donor that will donate an additional $5,000. This will bring their total of the contribution to $34,843.37. Royal Wood Flooring of Raleigh, North Carolina, can do the removal and the disposal of the old floor and the installation of the new pad and pour multi-purpose flooring through the National Joint Powers Alliance with the estimate cost of $49,675. That is the same floor that we are currently putting in at Shady Grove Elementary School. An additional work to be performed would be safety seating solutions to remove, store, and reinstall the bleachers with the estimated cost of $6,200. The total estimate for the cost of the project is $55,875, and this project can be scheduled in the spring with an estimated time of completion of 3 to 4 weeks. Staff recommends contracting with Royal Wood Flooring on an estimate cost of $49,675 and Safety Seating Solutions with an estimate of $6,200, and appropriating the $34,843.17 raised by Pine Brook PTO and allocating $21,032 of unbudgeted capital outlay funds to complete the project.
So we have a recommendation on the floor. Do we have a motion? We have a motion by Mr. Hales. Do we have a second? We have a second by Mr. Drexler. Do we have any questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Michael, how does this put us in the county in terms of replacing those interlocking floors? What other schools might be left is a better way to answer that.
Moxville Elementary and Conancer Elementary.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Freeman.
much.
This time, we're moving on to our budget resolution for 2017-18, and Dr. Hartness and Ms. Miller are going to talk to us about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you would have asked me early in the spring, the way the legislative session was going, I would have never told you we would be sitting here this soon adopting a budget, but we are. And the budget resolution that you have before you comes as a result of the changes in state appropriations and our local appropriations and federal appropriations. The federal grants fund resolution only contains amounts approved by DPI to date, so there will be some budget amendments presented to the board in the future changing those federal allotments. We also provided a PDF document that outlines the salary changes that were outlined in the state budget for the different employees throughout the district. And this budget is really a reflection of adjustments made to accommodate those salary changes. So you have before you the budget resolution, and I will turn it over to Ms. Miller to add to anything that we've missed there.
I didn't really have anything to add, just that if you had any questions regarding the salary changes or the resolution as presented. I can entertain those now.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Miller or Dr. Hartness? Seeing none, I will call for a motion to approve our FY 2017-18 budget. So we have a motion by Ms. Owens. Do we have a second? We have a second by Mr. Hales. Do we have any other comments, any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next up on our agenda is the North Carolina School Board's Board of Directors vacancy nomination. And we have been asked by, let me pull this up here real quick, I'm sorry. And we've been asked by the Ed Dunlap, the director of the School Board Association, to provide any, if we had any nominations. So we have that on the floor, and I don't know if we have any nominations for they have a few vacancies. I think it's a 2-year term for their North Carolina School Board Association Board of Directors. We will offer up a nomination if we choose to do so tonight, and then I think those nominations are voted on at the fall conference over in Greensboro, which will be November. I think that's November, isn't it? November, 1st November? Okay, mid-November.
I would like to make gladly and proud to nominate our Dub Potts for that position. I think he would do an excellent job. It'd be great to have him on there.
So we have I completely agree with you. So we have a nomination on the floor to nominate Mr. Potts. We have a second? So we have a second. Mr. Potts, are you willing to be a nominee? Well, we appreciate that. So we have a motion on the floor to nominate Dub for the board of directors for the North Carolina School Board Association. We have a second. Do we have? I'll tell you what. Actually, let's do it like this. All in favor? Motion carries. Are we going to say 6-1 or 7-0? How about that? Thank you for agreeing to do that, Mr. Potts. We think it would be a very worthwhile position for someone on this board to be there and advocate for Davie County.
I asked Chad if it was one of those things you had to go campaign for, or like some of the state conferences you go. I said, I'm not interested if you got to do that. So.
Well, you got
done
the
all
right,
the
you got the right
campaigning
time, so.
that I could enjoy this past time.
Thank you. At this time, we're moving on to public address to the board, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Wilson. Do we have anyone?
Well, I'm sad to report that we do not. But if you would like me to sing a song or something, I
No, we'll pass. We'll pass. Thank you. Next up, we move to committee and staff reports, and Mr. Naylor is up to come talk to us about our school bus inspection score.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members, and staff. You should have some information in your packet about our school bus inspection score for last year. And just to give you a little history about that, general statute requires that we inspect school buses and activity buses every 30 calendar days. And there's a fairly extensive process that we go through that's mandated by the state. There's a 44-item mandatory checklist of components that we look at. It ranges anything from light bulbs to warning devices, tires, brakes, of course, engine components, and many things that are working pieces and parts of the bus. The drivers also play a role in that as well, because their driver's compartment area has to be clean and free of things that might park the bus or take it out of service, like de-icer and contraband that might be on the bus that was picked up or left by a child. So this is a pretty big component of what we do every day and every week. And it's a team effort. I just want to make sure that you understand it's not one person or one group of people. It's a culmination of teamwork from our drivers, our bus coordinators, our mechanic staff, and our office staff. They look at our inventory. They do spot checks of our inventory. They look at our records that we keep for safety and make sure that we're doing the proper things. They randomly pick 10% of our fleet, pull it out. I don't know which buses they're going to get when they come, and they inspect those buses like we do. And each defect that's found is assigned a point value. Obviously, the more serious the defect, the higher the points that would be. And some defects are about 450 items that take a bus out of service. If you can imagine, there's just a ton of them. And so when we do our inspections every week, We divide those up into 4 weeks in the month, so we don't do every bus on the same week or the same schedule. And I have different folks looking at those buses. We have to be certified, and we have 5 people on staff, including myself, that are certified inspectors. Jeremy is one of them. He's my lead mechanic and was able to join us tonight. But our score this past year was a 7.14, which was the best in our region, and actually it was the best score in the state of North Carolina. So I'm very proud of our staff, our teams that work with us, and the bus drivers. And I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. And we've been in the top tier. We continue to strive for success. And what we do is, I tell my guys that we don't have to win every year, but I want us to be on the top of the mound. And if we just continue to do what we've been doing, the scores will fall into place where they may. So, do you have any questions about the process or how that works?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions, but I have a couple comments.
Yes, sir.
We all know the technicalities, I hope we understand the technicalities of a bus. And if you don't go push a particular button, it's going to go off, blowing horns and flashing lights, just in case we've left a child on there, all the way to the intrinsic pieces and parts of a motor. And Todd, I may have not heard you, but did you tell the average score for the state?
No, the average score for the state this past year was 37.
And now compare that to our score of 7.1. That's phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Todd, thank you. Jeremy, thank you for being here. And I will tell you, they do an outstanding job. I mean, that just speaks for itself. And to his point, they roll in, they say, I want this bus, this bus, this bus. He doesn't get to pick and choose. So they all have to be ready.
Well,
good job, Todd.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for keeping our students safe, and please extend our thanks to all the staff and bus drivers.
I will, and also, Dr. Hartness, I hope Eddie don't get hit by a bus either.
You have to be on your toes with Mr. Naylor. At this time, we're moving on to academic services, K2 assessment data for 2016-17, and I would ask Ms. Jennifer Lyon to come up.
Good evening, Chairman Fuller, Dr. Hartness, and board members. I'd like to share with you the K2 end-of-year assessment results for 2016-17. I'll start with the K2 math summative assessment. This is an assessment in all 3 grades that's aligned with the state standards, and the assessments are graded with a rubric. Students are scored on a level 1, 2, or 3. However, in kindergarten, the testing format is one-on-one, and those students receive one-step problems. In first grade, there's some one-on-one, but then they move to more small group or whole group testing for building independence. Also in first grade, this is where students begin to solve math problems with more than one step. In second grade, assessments are administered in small group or whole group for building independence, and those problems are often multi-step problems. You can see here that in 2015-16 and compared to 2016-17, it's pretty much the same. Kindergarten and first grade hold strong, 93% proficient and 87% proficient. And with second grade, we did gain 2 percentage points at 82% proficient. Here you can see those same results in graph form. Looking at our K2 reading end-of-year assessment, this is also known as the TRC M-Class assessment that you may have heard of. We've been doing this for several years. This tests phonics, fluency. It also tests accuracy, retail, written comprehension skills. You may remember that last year when I presented this information, we saw a drastic drop in those scores. And this was based on new standardized, much more standardized procedures that were pushed down by the state. There were higher level written comprehension questions. Teachers could no longer assess their students at the end of the school year. They still had to be a certified person, but at the same time, the comfort level was not there with the students. Teachers could no longer prompt students to provide more details when answering questions, and this is a big change for a 6 to 7-year-old. This impact is basically the same as when we changed from Common Core state standards, when we changed to Common Core state standards, and we saw the drop in EOG test scores for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. So this past year, what we did is we really wanted to focus on how could we make this testing more comfortable for our students. And we really looked at our Davie County Schools testing procedures. And we moved more from an overall summative mindset to a formative mindset. And we really wanted our teachers to use this assessment to drive instruction and not think of it as summative. So students worked at this, and our teachers worked at it, and we got input from the DPI, K-3 Literacy Division, as well as we got input from our reading teachers to really provide a more comfortable setting for testing for those students. And as you can see, kindergarten continued to grow. You can see that written comprehension really begins after kindergarten typically for our 1st graders, and that's where we see the drop. But we did see an increase this past year with those changes. 1st grade increased 13 percentage points at 51% proficient. 2nd grade increased 14 percentage points at 58% proficient. Here you can see a 3-year comparison. In 2014-15 was prior to those standardized changes. 2015-16 is where we had the changes that were pushed down from the state, and that's where you saw the drop. But then in 2016-17, you see that we have increased, and we believe that we'll continue to increase as long as we make sure that we're doing what we need to for our students. You can see that again here in graph form, again where those written comprehension questions do begin. We're continuing to rise to the challenge. Our teachers do a fantastic job of targeting vocabulary and skill-specific instruction, making sure that they're teaching the standards, as well as including comprehension and writing instruction daily within their instruction. You have questions for me?
Can you go back to, I think it was the 3rd screen that you put up?
Mm-hmm.
I think 3rd.
This one?
That's it.
Math.
Mostly for me, but others may have the same question. A kindergartner that is working at 93% proficiency, and then they go to the 1st grade, and this is all 1st graders, it reduces to 87% proficiency, and then they go to the 2nd grade and it's 82% proficiency. What does that tell you? What does that tell me?
It looks like what it would tell you is that the proficiency, of course, is dropping, but at the same time, the rigor is increasing. Just remembering that in kindergarten, it's one-on-one, just between the teacher and the student. One-step problems are being given to the students. One-step task is what we call them. In 1st grade, you're changing over. You're beginning to change over from that it's from the dependency to the independency. And they're moving from the one-on-one to more small group, whole group testing, to where it's not just the teacher and the student. 2nd grade, completely not one-on-one. It's all small group and whole group. So the rigor is increasing, and also the number of steps to solve the problems is increasing as well. So it changes from those one-step problems to multi-step problems.
Is there a comparison for Davie school system K through 2 to the state?
Great question, no. These are assessments that are provided by the state, and we use those assessments, but it's not the same as an EOG. That standardized test for North Carolina begins in 3rd grade, But for K2, same for reading. They do not give us those comparison results. M-Class is used across, it's a national assessment, but states pick and choose whether or not they want to use it. It's not required. And so those are not results that they give us.
And then my other question was going to go with the same chart that's there now for math, pull it up for reading,
Okay.
if you would, please.
This one, the 3-year comparison?
Right, kindergarten was is 72, and then first grade is 51, second grade is 58%. Now, those are proficiencies. Well, that's not horrible to me. What sounds bad, and you're going to give me an explanation so I'll feel less bad. That's, do the math, 28% not good enough, or 49% not good enough, and what's the other one? I can't even read it. My eyesight is not proficient. 58, so that would be 42.
That's correct. If you
That's a
look at,
one-step math problem. I got kindergarten down.
if you look at our EOG test scores, that is, it pretty much, it aligns. Last year, Aaron will share our accountability results for this past year, but we looked at a chart actually last year where the year before our students were 66% proficient in 3rd grade. And what we said is that that change from the 2015-16, that 44%, we didn't expect that. Because when they get to 3rd grade, we expected them to continue pretty much about the same pattern that they were testing with. That change was huge for M-Class testing. Remembering that this is an assessment that's very different than assessments that we give once they hit 3rd grade. This is an assessment that in 1st grade, they have to scale 7 levels to be proficient. It's very different. Also, the written comprehension is very challenging in comparison to what, in kindergarten, we expect them to begin the writing skills. But in 1st grade, those written comprehension questions are extremely challenging. And so we see that drop, but what our teachers have begun to do is really look at how that test is formatted. Because as you know, a lot of times when you're taking a test, it's all in the format. Students may understand, and if you were to look at those same results with retail and students being able to tell you the answers, we'd be in the 80s and 90s. It's the written comprehension piece that stumps us. And that was, the rigor to that last year was very new, and that stumped us. It very much stumped us last year.
Is it predictable that it's similar in all school systems as it shows here? Similar, if not, not as good, not as good results?
When we met with the K3 Literacy Division, we met with those representatives, they felt pretty good about our scores. I mean, they were pretty positive about it. So it's one of those things where they don't share with us those results, but they continue to say, you're doing well, you're doing a good job. I think that we have to just realize that this assessment is a, we talked about this, I think, the last time. Age appropriateness, I consider this test to not be age appropriate.
And I'd like to reiterate that, Mr. Drexler and the rest of the board. When you see that drop from kindergarten from 72% proficient to 51%, what I think has to be noted here is the developmental appropriateness of a 6-year-old being to write what they comprehend from what they just read. Whereas in kindergarten, they were retelling, they were answering a question that their teacher posed to them about what they read. Is it developmentally appropriate for a 1st grader? Are they prepared to write what they just comprehended in text? We question that. But this is an assessment that is provided by the state, is required by the State Board of Education, but we do not have any comparative data. They are not publishing any comparative data with other districts.
Correct.
It also reminds me of the time when we had the 4th grade writing test that was not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for that age group.
Yeah.
And all the stress that it caused because of that. And it did cause a great deal of stress to these students in K2. with not being age appropriate.
Yes. All right. Other questions?
Any other questions? This is similar to, similar situation with the Read to Achieve and the students, if you're the third graders in their testing and being held back and what they're required to do in a scenario to be, exactly, in those testing scenarios.
It's a great segue to the next agenda item.
I'm sorry, I didn't tell them. Now we're moving on to the Read to Achieve Summer Camp update.
Okay, so Read to Achieve Summer Camp update. We're going to provide, I'll provide a little bit of an overview for our camp, and then Jen's going to step up and give you some data, some results from that camp. So it was a nice segue. Thank you, Chairman Fuller. First of all, an overview. This is our 5th annual Read to Achieve Summer Camp, which is really difficult to believe, but this was the 5th one. We had 132 students, and that included 3rd graders who were required to be there, as well as 1st and 2nd graders that we could invite to benefit and really be proactive in the process. We held the camp at Moxville Elementary School again. It was 16 days total, June 26th through July 20th, with testing on the 2nd to the last day. And important partners to recognize in this situation, Mebane Charitable Foundation, the YMCA, as well as Moxville Public Library, and those will pop up a little bit later in the overview as well. First of all, you'll see with the bullets here, high-quality staff. We were really fortunate in that we did not have to hire a lot of new teachers for our Read to Achieve camp this year. Most of them returned, so we really just had a handful of new folks. And although the state funds were reduced this year, Mebane dollars as part of the Davy Leeds grant allowed us to hire high-quality staff again to really develop their capacity through professional development, as well as provide some supplies and materials for the camp. So we spent the first 2 days together collaborating and learning and getting to know each other. So you see this funny picture. This was from the training here in this room. And we worked with A+ fellows with North Carolina A+, and they provided an opportunity not only for training, but really for some team building, some time for teachers to be inspired, and to really allow us to kick off camp with a positive approach. Now, that said, coordinating a camp with over 100 students is much like opening a school and running a school over the summer. So there are lots of folks that we need to thank for their involvement in this process. We had buses to coordinate with the bus garage. We had breakfast and lunch that was provided through child nutrition. We had health and medical needs covered by Kathy Bocchino. We had YMCA counselors that helped with physical activity that provided recess time and therefore collaborative planning for our teachers every day. They also planned a water afternoon or a water day that was fun for the kids. We had special activities that the Moxville Public Library provided, as well as Erin Foyle and her staff helping us with assessments and particularly with retesting our 3rd graders. The approach or the methods this year were very similar to what we've used in the past. Again, with the financial support of the Mebane Foundation, we were able to maintain that same approach and even hopefully tweak and improve that. So again, we included the integration of the arts, small group reading instruction, as well as that intensive hill wrap intervention, which is a 4-to-1 ratio. This year, we also had special attention on writing as one of our critical literacy components. And at the end of camp, all of the students took home their very own books to continue reading after camp was over. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Line to talk a little bit about data.
The camp served 132 students, 28 first graders. We had 29 second graders and 75 third graders. Of the 132, 127 were assessed through M-Class, iReady, or the Read to Achieve state assessment. 5 of those third graders were what we call good cause exemptions, and they were invited to come to camp. So while the third graders demonstrated the greatest growth at 81.4% proficient, the overall growth of all 3 grade levels was really remarkable. 78% of our students showed improvement after 16 days of camp, and they had fun, focused literacy instruction. Oh, that's the wrong one. So results for our second graders, we had 21 of the 29 show growth, which averaged an increase of 6 points in fluency, and the range from 1 to 28 points in growth. And then our first graders, 21 out of 28, 75% showed growth, an average increase of 6 points in fluency, and ranged from 2 to 20 points improvement. And here again, you can see that overall growth, where you see that we had 127 students that were that showed that improvement, and 78% made growth. At the end, as we normally do, we had a powwow celebration, and that powwow celebration was really a culmination of everything the students had learned through the arts and through literacy, and really were able to show that growth and how they gained confidence. Thank you for your support, and do you have any questions?
I've got a question. With regard to growth, how did you measure your growth? What did you use as a start point in order to reach that end point?
Okay, when we were looking at growth, we looked at two different things. Actually 3 different things. For first and second graders, we were looking at the data that they did not have a state assessment for those students. So we were really looking at the Hill RAP data that we had, and looking at the information, the assessments that they could do more informally. For the third graders, we were looking at the Read to Achieve retest. That was the primary means, but they also had access to iReady, which is an online way of assessing them. So we were looking at, did they grow in one or the other or both? So just looking at those scale scores moving.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Haynes, for the board's information, and I know you know this on the back of your hand, but talk a little bit about how a student is placed, or what qualifies a student to come to Read to Achieve camp, because we have a lot of students who want to be there.
Sure. Students who are in third grade who do not pass their reading EOG have an opportunity for retesting, and Aaron can get into the details. They have an opportunity both to retake the EOG as well as to take a Read to Achieve test, which is formatted a little bit differently. So there are 2 opportunities for other standardized tests after that EOG if they elect to do that. They can elect not to do that retesting and just go to camp. But students are invited to camp if they do not have a good cause exemption, and there are several different ways that they could have a good cause exemption, whether that be through their ESL status and how long they've been in the country and how much instruction they've had in English. But it also has a lot to do as to whether they have qualified for as an exceptional child. They have EC status, and they've had remediation, intensive remediation in literacy for the last 2 years. So there are multiple pieces of that we have to look at as far as whether they have a good cause exemption and that sort of thing. If they do not have a good cause exemption and they do not pass any state test, then they're really required to come to camp with us as a third grader. So when they come to camp and they participate, if their attendance is good and they put forth good effort and they go to camp, the way that we've handled it in Davie County is they retest at the end of camp. If they still don't pass, we are going to go ahead and move them on to 4th grade with what's called a 4RR tag, which means retained in reading, 4th grade retained in reading. And when they go into 4th grade as a 4RR, they are going to have additional support put in place. Their teachers are going to get additional information about them from camp, whether that be anecdotal notes or other data. Additional supports will be put into place during their 4th grade year. They will continue to have opportunities throughout 4th grade to show proficiency, whether that be through BOY with the M class. They have official retesting, I think in October, yes. And then, of course, with the EOG at the end of the year. So there are multiple opportunities for those students to demonstrate proficiency and lose that 4RR tag as they go through 4th grade. There are some students who are retained in 3rd grade off the get-go. That decision really happens if a student overall is not ready for fourth grade. So we're not just looking at reading, we're not just looking at a state test, but overall, that student is not ready to move on to fourth grade in all areas. And that's still a principal's decision. Whereas going through Read to Achieve camp and making the decision about promotion or retention at the end of the summer rests in Dr. Hartness's hands based on legislation. Sorry, was that more than you wanted to know?
No, I just wanted the board to hear the different levels of support that we have for students, and this is a big change. I know, Dub, you heard that decision rests in the superintendent. The law at North Carolina has always said the principal of the school grades and places all students until Read to Achieve statutes came along. And then there was a big push to ensure proficiency by the end of the third grade in reading before promotion. And then there were safety nets like a 4RR, where we're giving them reading remediation in fourth grade and continuing that support. But these ladies and our principals and instructional support staff have put a lot of measures in place for students in Davie County to ensure they're on the right path to reading.
Well, and to say that 1 out of 4 students who were required to attend camp, after really 14 days of instruction, if that many students, in this case 17 students, cross that threshold or cross that hurdle after only 14 days of intensive instruction, that's pretty amazing. 25% in 14 days. So, and they go on without the 4RR. They go on as a clear promotion.
I think the whole process is just, it says volumes to me about Davie County and trying to keep those kids, because without that reading assessment and without the events that you have done this past summer, you and the team, those kids would not be where they are. You've got kids that are at the point of failing, if we'll use that term, and not going to the fourth grade, but by going to that camp, then they can go to the fourth grade. And yes, they might go with a handicap, but you've got things in place to pick them up at the fourth grade to help them overcome those obstacles. So that's phenomenal. That is really phenomenal.
Thank you for the update. That camp that's a wonderful program. It's really helping those kids, move them in a position to be successful, and I think it's an awesome program. Thank you for the update again. Now, Ms. McNeil will come up and talk to us about our STEM pipeline camp.
Good evening, Chairman Fuller and Dr. Hartness and members of the board. I would just like to bring some information to you to update you on the STEM pipeline camp that was held this summer. This, again, was our 5th annual event. Our pipeline camp started 5 years ago, and we have housed this at North Davie Middle School. The intent or purpose in this camp is to promote interest in science among our middle school students, to give them some support to help them be more successful in their science and mathematics courses, and to promote the STEM Center at Davie High School. So from June 19th to June 30th this year, we held our summer camp. The first week of our camp, from June 19th to the 23rd, the focus of that camp was on crime scene investigations. Last year, we did a unit on forensic science, and it was very, very popular with our rising 7th graders. So this year, we had 36 rising 7th grade campers, and we also invited our 8th grade, our campers from last year, which were our rising 8th grade campers, and we had 9 of those to return and join us for this unit. Again, it was very popular. They loved the forensic science. So this year, we took them on a deeper dive into the forensic science piece, and they were investigating. They looked at fingerprints. They did their own fingerprints. They analyzed fingerprints. They discovered how to pull latent fingerprints off of different objects. They looked at forgery. So they had a tremendous week in looking more at crime scenes. And then the final project there was to do the Pilttown forgery investigation, where they were deciding who was the criminal in that particular case. But they had a wonderful event for the first week, and those students then went to the Greensboro Nature Science Center on Friday of that week. On Thursday, their parents did come in, and they always present their investigations and their information to their parents on Thursday, and then Friday is the field trip. Our second week focuses on simple machines. This week, we started the week with a new activity, and this was using some Lego builders, base cars and wheels and axles, and the students learned about the aerodynamics of cars and the force and energy as they practiced with some of the Lego pieces first. And you can see there the students were all into racing and using the gravity to come down from the bleachers to see which student could come up with the fastest racer that week. Then after they learned about that process, the next part of the week, they were designing solar cars. The teams were given a solar panel, the wheels and axles, cardboard, and other objects, and they were designing. You can see they started, the one young lady up in the corner, she decided to go to the whiteboard, and she was designing hers that way. Some were using the iPads, and you can see the basic rulers being used. So they were using all different kinds of tools to see how they could come up with the fastest racer, the fastest solar panel racer. So on Thursday, we had race day. And they were out in the parking lot at North Davie Middle School, and they were racing their vehicles. And you can see the difference in the vehicles there. Some had the solar panels in different positions, but there's your winning team at the bottom. And then on Friday of that week, we always go to the NASCAR Hall of Fame, where our students, again, get to focus on the aerodynamics. They learn more about speed. They learn more about what it takes for those race cars when they are on the track on the weekends. So there you can see them practicing as a pit crew for one of the race cars, and then there they are lined up waiting to get that simulation experience so they can be behind the wheel of one of the racers. So that was our activities for the week. Our camp is sponsored by the Davie Foundation. And this year, our Davie Foundation does have the Healthy Davie theme. So we were trying to incorporate that as part of our program. They do have lunch provided through our summer meals program. And we also provide them, make sure we have healthy snacks. And then they do have an activity period during the afternoon, right after lunch, so that they can get some of the exercise. Our staff this year consisted of Ms. Emily Fanning, an 8th grade science teacher at South Davie Middle School. She served as our lead teacher. And Mr. Colin Farabee and Kathy Milius, 2 science teachers from Davie High School, rounded out that team this year. So it was a fantastic week. Again, 45 students the first week. It was quite a challenge. We'll make some changes next year, but we do intend to keep inviting those 8th graders to come back and join us so that we can, again, promote the love of science and try to encourage them as they go to the high school to possibly join our STEM Center. Thank you.
Have any questions or comments? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
These summer camps are awesome. Now I'll ask Ms. Erin Foyle to come up, and she's going to present some accountability and student information first off our 10-day enrollment information.
I'm going to switch it around. I'm
Okay,
going to do the accountability
works
data
for
first.
me.
I have the enrollment numbers at the end. So, good evening. I'm glad to be here tonight to talk to you about the 16-17 accountability results. They were presented to the State Board of Education on September 7th. So this year we get to have the presentation to you right after the presentation to the State Board. So that's exciting. We're going to talk a lot tonight about the READY model. And we're going to talk about what makes up the READY model and how you get to where all those numbers, you've got an incredible amount of numbers in your packet. And so we're going to go through how we get to those some of those numbers. Obviously, I can't cover every single number tonight, and I won't do that. We'd be here all night long. But we're going to hit some high spots and some things of interest as we go through, and we're going to talk about how we get all those things. So again, we're going to talk first about the accountability model for 16-17. We are in the READY accountability model. We've been there for 5 years now. And so as we go through, we're going to look at those things that make up the Ready accountability model. The first thing is performance. This is what you think about as proficiency. So when we talk about a student being proficient, when they take their end of grade test or their end of course test, they're going to make a level. And so for our EOGs and EOCs, levels 1 through 5 are the possibilities. Levels 3, 4, and 5 are considered grade level proficient, and levels 4 and 5 are considered college and career ready. Tonight, I'm really going to focus on grade level proficient numbers. I'll give you a little bit of a reason why for that. As we are at the federal level, moving to the new Every Student Succeeds Act, we are forming our state model to go along with that. So in the plan that we are submitting to the federal government from North Carolina, they are really focusing on the grade level proficient numbers and not so much on the college and career ready numbers. So I could do both, but we'll pick one and we'll leave it easy. All the college and career numbers are also in your packet. So if you have any questions about those, I'll be glad to talk to you later, or you can email me anytime. So performance, tonight we'll be talking about grade level proficiency, which is your levels 3, 4, and 5. The other part of the Ready accountability model is growth. And growth for the state of North Carolina is calculated by a system called EVOS, which is done by SAS in Cary, North Carolina. EVOS takes all the data from the state, all the kids who take tests, and they group the kids with similar testing histories. And so all the kids with similar testing histories are then compared to each other. You could say that they line them all up in a line, and the most proficient are at the front and the least are in the back. And then they look at the next year's data and they line them all up again. And if you moved ahead in the line of comparing you to all the kids who had similar testing histories, if you move ahead in that line, then you have exceeded your growth. If you stay about the same place in line, then you've met your expected growth. And if you've moved behind your peers, in other words, the teaching that was given to you was maybe not of the same quality as the other ones, so you have not met your expected growth. So they do that, and the teachers, it's supposed to isolate the growth data from external factors, from demographics, from maybe economics, those type of things. So it's supposed to isolate that because you really are comparing kids with similar testing histories just to each other. So that's the way growth is calculated in North Carolina, so we'll talk some about that growth as we go through this Ready accountability model. The elements that we'll look at include at the elementary and middle schools those end of grade tests, which is reading and math for grades 3 through 8 and science for grades 5 and 8. In your high school, they have several things that we look at beyond just the end of course test. You have end of course tests in Math 1, Biology, and English 2. You also have the ACT Workkeys test. That's given to seniors that are CTE concentrators. You have your ACT test, which is given to all of your juniors. Everybody that's a junior in in the whole state actually has to take the ACT. Math course rigor, that's who has passed Math 3 before they graduate, which is also a requirement. So you'll see that almost everybody is greater than 95%, and I don't really concentrate much on that number because of that. And our cohort graduation rates. So high school gets judged on all of those different factors, whereas elementary and middle school are really just looking at those standardized tests at the end of the year. In addition to all of the test scores, they also publish school performance grades. That's our A through F scale. We've talked about this several times before. It is made up of 80% performance, which is proficiency, and 20% growth. They look at the growth index for schools, and they convert that to a number, and then that number is combined together with the proficiency, and then they look between 0 and 100, where did you score? Right now, the school performance grades are judged on a 15-point scale. So 85 to 100 is an A, so on and so forth as they go down. And that should stay that way for another year. and actually another 2 years, and then they will move on to a 10-point scale as the legislation is written right now. So let's talk about our school performance grades since they've come about in 13-14, our very first year. You can see here on the screen, I'm going to run through the years, and I really want you to get a sense of what it looks like and what it feels like. So in our first year, we had 1 D school, 1 A school, and you can see the rest split between B and C. In 14-15, we moved on up, and we had 7 C schools, 3 B schools, and 1 A school. In 15-16, we had 6 C schools, 4 B schools, and 1 A school. And then now in 16-17, we have 6 C schools, 4 B schools, and 1 A school. So you'll see how that changes throughout the years, but this year we are at 6 C, 4 in B, and 1 in A. All right, we're going to move on to comparisons. What I did this year is I really took some bigger overall numbers for us to look at instead of really concentrating on small things. So first I wanted to look at our performance composite. The performance composite is really every test we give. So it is the ultimate big picture view of how we're doing as a district. And our performance composite, as you'll see here, this is from 2013-14 all the way up to 2016-17. And what I did was in every one of these, and you'll see them, they're all the same. Everything that's blue is Davie County Schools. Everything that's red is the state. And they're all on a scale of 0 to 100. So you'll kind of get a sense for what that looks like and what that feels like. You'll see here our performance composite has gone down between 13 and 14 and now, but it is slightly up 0.1% from last year. So we're really very steady with our performance composite. You don't see a whole lot of movement there. The state has steadily crept up a little bit, but we are still above the state in our performance composite. I'll talk to you a little bit too as we get into these graphs about sample size. When you're looking at the way proficiencies, or when we look at our cohort graduation rate, when you look at smaller groups of students, you're going to have bigger jumps from year to year than you do when you're looking at the entire state. Or later on, we're going to compare ourselves to national numbers. And so you're going to see how it smooths out a lot when you get to state numbers or U.S. numbers. So I don't want you to be alarmed by seeing some jumps in ours. We are a much smaller sample size than the state or the country, and so that's really to be expected. So our grade level performance composite here, like I said, we are slightly up from last year, but really very stagnant. I wouldn't say that 0.1% up was of any significance. Let's just look at our math. So this particular graph is going to include all of the math tests. So that's grades 3 through 8 and our Math 1 test at the high school. So as a district, we have always historically done much better on our math test. And you can see that reflected here. We have a bigger gap above the state in math than we will in reading. You'll see in reading in just a minute. And we are slightly up with our math composite scores as well. We did, and there's no numbers on here, so I'm going to tell you what the numbers are. Last year we were at 61.6, and then in 2015-16, we were at 61.6. In 2016-17, we were at 62, and that's proficiency. And North Carolina in 16-17 was at 55.4. When you look at your reading numbers, you'll see here we have a smaller gap. Historically, that's just the way the numbers have looked here. You'll also see that in our reading composite that we have gone down since we first started, and we are slightly up again from last year, but really very stable from where we were in 15-16. So in 15-16, our reading composite was 61.6, and in 16-17, it was 61.8. So pretty much very stagnant, but you can see that the state increased, so that gap has become a little bit smaller. As we look at our district, one of the things that we like to look at as a staff is where we have challenges. That's where we want to find, where we're doing great, and we want to replicate that in other places. So I want to talk about some of the challenges that we see. And the first one is in grade 3. You can see that this is composite, so this is math and reading in grade 3. And you can see that this was one of our biggest drops this year in 16-17, was in grade 3. And so there are some challenges there, and there are challenges there beyond just teaching students. I know that, we just talked a little bit about the Read to Achieve law, and some of the difficulties that creates and the stress level that creates in the 3rd grade. So there are issues to work through there that are really just beyond just what's going on in the classroom. So grade 3 is one of our challenges. Another challenge that we have is grade 8. And so you'll see our grade 8 composite scores. That was our other biggest drop. This is reading and math again. And so our grade 8 composite scores dropped from 64.3% to 64.3% to 62.3%. From 15-16 to 16-17. And you can see the state, again, is increasing just a little bit. And so although we are still above the state, that gap was getting a little bit closer. Along with those challenges, we certainly have celebrations. So one of the grade levels that did really well is grade 5. You can see what they look like compared to the state. They had a huge bump up this past year, and they did go down just slightly, but their increase in 15-16 was such that I still wanted to include them in the celebrations, because they really have, in reading and math, done a wonderful job in really increasing those test scores and pushing those kids up. So you see in the grade 5 composite in 15-16, we were at, that's the state level. We were at, what is that? Yeah, about almost 70%, and then it went down to just below 70%. Grade 6 has also been, in 16-17 was a really good grade, and I'm sure that we'll be going there to look for some of the strategies that they used, because they really, you can see where they started just above 60% and went down a little bit, and then when they've come back up actually to above where they were. And our entire district saw a dip after 13-14, and we've been climbing back towards that original 13-14 data. And 6th grade, you can see, has exceeded that 13-14 data. So grade 6 did a great job this past year as well. All right, now we're going to look at high school data. This is district high school data. And so we look at several different factors in our high school data. The first one is our EOC data. Now our EOC data, you can see that over the past 4 years, it has decreased. It is getting very close to the state line. The state has increased slightly, and you can see where we are now in 16-17 at just above 60%. I think it's around 63%. That is all 3 EOCs combined together, so that's Math 1, Biology, and English 2. The second thing in the Ready Accountability Model for high schools is the ACT. This is looking at the percentage of students who meet the minimum composite score to be admitted to a UNC college here in the state. So that's 17. That is the lowest ACT score that they will accept. And this is looking at the percentage of our students who made that composite score. So you can see here that, again, and this is where those increases, the jumps around, happen a little bit more with us with our smaller sample size. But you'll see that we went up to closer to 80%, and then we came back down, and we're just under 70% now with the AC composite of our students. Hold on a second, let me find it. Oh, there it is. 68% currently. So 68% of our juniors, and that is the entire junior class, meet that minimum score to get accepted into a UNC college. The other thing that we look at in high school is our ACT Workkeys. Again, these are our senior CTE concentrators, and they take the ACT Workkeys. That is an industry-recognized test, and students who perform well on it can take that certification to an employer and show them, well, I did well on this, and the employer can know kind of what the level is of that employee they're about to hire. So the state of North Carolina looks at the percentage of students who make a silver or better, and for us, we're actually at the highest we've gotten yet. So we're always right at the top of the state with this, and we increased from 87.2% of our students that made silver or better last year to 89.8% of our students that made a silver or better in 16-17. Next, we'll look at our four-year graduation rate. I do have a lot more data on this. We have for the last 10 years. We've actually tracked for the last 11 or 12 years, but I ran out of room. Our four-year cohort graduation rate. You'll see here we're in blue again, and you'll see where we stand in relation to the state. So you can see the state, smoother line than we have, and we're jumping around a little bit due to our smaller sample size. But you can see that we are back up to almost our top score before. We're at 87.3 for 16-17. And our highest was in 13-14 at 87.6. So we're very close to that highest cohort graduation rate. And again, the cohort graduation rate looks at those students who finish high school in 4 years. So if you have a student who doesn't finish high school in 4 years, then they're not counted in this. If you have a student who is not going to get a diploma because they're in a self-contained EC class, they're not included in this. So be aware of those things. We can still have kids. Those kids may still go on and graduate. This is just who graduates in 4 years. So that's high school data. I wanted to throw in a couple of national comparisons to kind of see where Davie County ranks when you're looking at the nation. Graduation rates is one of the ways that we can look. And so here you can see the U.S. is added in yellow to these graphs. So Davie County is still blue. The latest data for the United States is the 14-15 school year. So that's the last one that you see there on the graph. And then as they update their data, I'll update the graph as well. But the last that's available for the U.S. is 14-15. The other thing that we can look at is the ACT composite score for graduates. So this is actually the score they make on the test. This is not a proficiency. And so you see my graph ranges from 18.8 up to 21.4. And so that's the actual score that they're making as a whole on that test. And you'll see Davie County schools, because it is you're looking at points there, it's a much bigger curve than we're used to seeing on these other graphs. But you'll see that Davie County Schools is really between North Carolina and the United States. But let me tell you about the United States number. In the United States, not every student is required to take the ACT. So in most of the United States, there's several different states that do require it, but many states don't. And so the number that you're looking at here really includes those that just self-elect to take the ACT, which are usually going to be your college-bound kids and not always students that don't plan on going to college. But I did want to show you here that, even with all of our students taking, especially in 15-16, we were quite close to the U.S. average. We have dropped down back to 20 for 16-17, and again, those jumps are very normal, so we may see the same thing again next year as far as a jump up or down. All right, last thing we'll talk about tonight is growth status. I did tell you about growth and how we calculate the growth, so I want to show you kind of how we have done growth here in Davie County for the past 4 years. So you'll see here in these particular graphs, the red is did not meet their growth expectations. Green is they met their growth expectations, and blue is they exceeded. So you'll see here, I like these type of charts, the irregular charts, because they're the largest size really kind of jumps out at you. And you can see in 13-14 that most of the schools were green. In 14-15, again, most of the schools are green. You can see in 15-16, again, most of our schools are green, although it's getting much closer. 5 of them were at a met status, 2 of them were in a not met, and 4 were in a exceeded. And you can see in 16-17 that we did have 5 schools that exceeded growth, 4 that met, and 2 that did not meet. So the particular school data is all in your packet, and you can go through there and see all of that. But I did want you to see the comparison, and as we go forward, we actually had more schools that exceeded growth this year. And so that means taking that individual student in that classroom and teaching them, and they learned more than their peers in North Carolina. So that's what that growth means. All right. That is the end of the accountability presentation, and I know that that's a whole bunch. I'll be glad to entertain any questions, or as always, if you have any questions later on after you've had a chance to digest this, I'm happy to answer those as well.
Who takes the ACT Workkeys?
Those are your senior students, so your 12th graders, who are CTE concentrators. And what that means is that they have taken a certain combination of CTE courses. So when they graduate on their diploma, they get a concentrator status.
Okay, so the early college didn't have the opportunity?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have any other accountability questions?
All right. We'll go on to enrollment. Day 10 was yesterday, and so we have gone through and we have looked at each school, and we're looking at the difference in enrollment in those schools and then the difference overall. Here you have your elementary schools. I just kind of put them up there. You can see that we've had some growth at Pine Brook Elementary. I would say that's not unexpected, considering with the new high school there, employees' children are sometimes going over to Pine Brook to be in that same area. Coolamy Elementary is probably our biggest drop, with 11% less enrolled this year than there was at this time last year. This is day 10 numbers from 16-17 and day 10 numbers from 17-18. Overall, with elementary school, we are down about 2% in enrollment. In our middle schools, you can see that North Davie stayed exactly the same. South Davie is up 6% and William Ellis is down 9%. You can see Central Davie is up 25%, but that is just from 4 to 5. So, middle school totals, we are down just at 1%. High school totals, you can see that Davie County High School compared to 16-17 day 10 numbers, we are down 1%. Early college has a few more students to be up 2%, and again, Central Davie Academy down 25%, which equaled out to be 3 students there. And you can see our high school totals are down just at 1% as well. So that makes an overall system total of a 2% difference, 2% less than we were last year at our 10-day numbers. Are there any questions about enrollment? All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention tonight. And again, if you have anything that you need to ask me, I'll be glad to speak to you whenever. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. We appreciate all that information. You always do a good job. It's always a lot of information to cover, but we appreciate it. We appreciate you. Very pertinent and important information. Now we're going to talk about the summer, or have an update on the summer feeding program from George Slicki.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Hartness, Mr. Wallace, and Chairman Fuller. I'm going to take just a moment of your time to recognize the Davie County Child Nutrition Department for another great summer and their efforts in feeding the children of Davie County while school was out. Beginning on June 19th, we started our third consecutive year of operating a summer food service program throughout the county that provides free meals to children up to the age of 18. This program ensures that when students are out of school, they still have the opportunity to receive nutritious meals until school is back in session. Many children throughout the county face the uncertainty of where they are going to get their next meal from. In fact, North Carolina has one of the highest percentages in the United States of children under the age of 18 who are food insecure on a regular basis. In North Carolina, almost 1 in 4, or 24.6, face food insecurity. This year, unlike last year, I was able to go out on some of our delivery routes throughout the county and hand out meals to children who were in need. This is one of the most humbling experiences that I've ever encountered, and one that I always remember. No matter what their situation, these kids that I had the opportunity to serve were some of the most respectful and appreciative kids I have ever met. So over the 36 days this summer, the Child Nutrition Department served 7,603 breakfast meals and 18,586 lunch meals for a grand total of 26,189 meals. If you do the math, break it down, that's 728 meals a day just during the summer. Quite impressive, if you ask me. With all that being said, if you happen to travel to any of our schools in the district, please stop by and say thanks to the men and women that work for Davie County Child Nutrition and what they do on a daily basis for the children of Davie County schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the update. That's a wonderful program, and we, I tell you, it's to your point, there are many kids out there that really need it, and I think it's a wonderful program. It's doing a lot of good that a lot of people don't think about. You get outside the classroom, and you know we're Davie County Schools is not only educators, and I think it's a very worthwhile program. And thanks for all your hard work. Please extend our thanks to everyone that helped with that. At this time, we're moving on to our construction budget update on the high school, and I'll call on Ms. Miller to talk to us about that.
Thank you, Chairman Fuller, members of the board, and Dr. Hartness. You have in your packet 2 documents this evening. I'll draw your attention first to the change order spreadsheet. That is showing you all the change orders to date, and then in the very bottom, you'll notice that there's also a pending change order that will be presented to you in October. The second document is the spreadsheet that we've been using for the last 2 years, 3 years now, and again, it starts with the original construction budget on the left. In the center is your amended construction budget. And then on the very right is the actual expenses to date, along with about a third of the way down your change orders, your total change orders. And then in the very bottom right corner are your revenue sources. I would like to draw your attention. This is the first time we're showing, we do have some other revenues besides the sale of the bonds and the lottery funds, and we've added those revenues there to show you as well. To date, we have $84,500 of other revenues. Those other revenues are, we received $50,000 from the Department of Transportation to reimburse us from expenses for the lanes that were bus parking, sorry about that. $27,000 from Pepsi, and then there was $7,500 from the Moxville Women's Association, Moxville Women's Club. Thank you. Are there any questions? To date, we have paid 91% of the expenses that total 91% of the total budget. Any questions at this point?
Any questions
Okay.
for Ms. Miller?
Okay.
Thank you for that update.
I'll bring it again in 3 months.
That's right, yeah. Mr. Drexler pointed out that Mr. Morefield's not here tonight. That's right. He's moved on. That's right. That's right. Not in his seat. We are wrapped up with the meeting at this point, and I will ask if there's any board members have any comments. If not, we will adjourn. Yes, sir.
I know it's been a long meeting, but I do want to say a couple things. And I appreciate Dr. Hartness and Mr. Wallace recognizing some of the behind-the-scene folks. And I would like to add you as one of those persons who's done a lot of work. I know when I first came on this board, I heard from Chad Clinton in particular about the number of hours that you had spent, and I had a chance to observe that in the last 6 or 7 months, and I appreciate that, as well as Mr. Nicholson. He's the most laid-back person I've ever seen to be a high school principal, so I know he's churning on the inside. But how he pulled it all together and act like it's just another day at that, I don't know. And then Mr. Hartness, Dr. Hartness recognized Michael Spielman, but I'm sure Jeff Wallace would be another one of those getting that recognition. And lastly, I want to say that those two events that I was able to attend, the convocation and the open house, if that didn't make you proud of Davie County Schools and the type of responses that we had from staff and even the students who were there at open house, if that doesn't get you excited about Davie County Schools, you're destined to be in private school, I promise you. So it was a wonderful experience, and I just want to say thank you publicly to all those behind the scenes who was pulling that off. It made me feel good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dub. Anybody else have anything?
Follow up. When you walked into the school on the ribbon cutting day and you saw the community there, people there who did not have children in high school, grandparents, aunts and uncles and cousins just walking through in awe. It was a humbling experience to see what happens when a community comes together, what happens when people are on the same path, in the same bus, going the same direction, and how excited the students were to say, hey, they really care about me. Look what they did. And I do want to thank everyone, from the guy that pushed that dirt for the first time all the way to those who went to the voting booth. I mean, we really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anything else? Seeing nothing, nothing else, I will thank all of y'all for coming and being here. This is kind of a long meeting from our last few. Anyway, we've had some short ones, but
You still need a motion even if you want to go home.
I am. I haven't gotten there yet. But I want to thank everyone for coming, and we do appreciate it. And I will now ask for a motion to adjourn. We have a motion by Mr. Hales. We have a second by Ms. Horn. All in favor? 7-0. We are adjourned.